In April 2013, a middle-aged man was arrested near a lake in central Maine after breaking into a nearby camp for food. When questioned, he made a claim police initially found difficult to believe. He had been living alone in the surrounding forest, in complete isolation from other human contact, for very close to 27 years. His name was Christopher Knight, and his story turned out to be true and remarkably well documented. He had walked into the Maine woods in 1986 at around 20 years old and simply never left, surviving harsh New England winters in a small camp hidden in dense forest, sustaining himself largely through carefully planned burglaries of nearby cabins for food, batteries, and books, while deliberately avoiding any direct human contact for over a quarter-century. Knight's case is genuinely unusual even among documented hermits. Nearly all long-term voluntary isolation cases involve at least occasional supply runs, family contact, or some minimal social interaction. By his own account and independent investigation afterward, Knight had almost none. No conversation with another human being, he stated, for approximately the entire 27 years, beyond a single brief, accidental hello to a passing hiker decades in. After his arrest, journalist Michael Finkel conducted extensive interviews with Knight, later published as a book, giving researchers and the public an unusually detailed, first-person account of what nearly 3 decades of true, voluntary solitude actually does to a human mind. Knight's own explanation for his choice, given in later interviews, was notably understated. He described feeling a persistent sense of not fitting in with other people from a young age and experiencing simply walking into the woods as an immediate, powerful sense of relief rather than any dramatic personal crisis or specific traumatic event. Researchers and clinicians who have studied his case, along with other documented long-term hermits, generally caution against assuming a single simple explanation applies to all such cases. Some documented hermits describe religious or spiritual motivations. Others, including aspects of Knight's own account, describe something closer to a profound, long-standing discomfort with ordinary social interaction without necessarily meeting the clinical criteria for any specific diagnosed disorder. Knight himself, notably, resisted attempts by journalists and some mental health professionals to neatly categorize his choice as evidence of a specific psychiatric condition, insisting in interviews that he had made a considered, rational decision, and describing his decades alone in largely positive terms, solitude experienced as peace rather than suffering, at least by his own account. This point matters for how researchers now think about voluntary long-term isolation generally. Unlike solitary confinement or unplanned survival isolation, cases like Knight's involve someone actively choosing continued solitude year after year. When other options were always genuinely available to him, he could, at any point, have simply walked back into town. Knight's own account, corroborated by journalists and to some extent by investigators after his arrest, offers a rare, detailed window into the specific psychological and practical effects of truly extended solitude, effects that echo, and in some ways exceed, patterns documented in shorter isolation studies covered elsewhere on this channel. He described a marked decline in verbal ability after so many years without conversation, struggling, by his own account, to find words easily and feeling acutely uncomfortable during his first extended conversations after arrest, a pattern broadly consistent with research suggesting language and certain social cognitive skills can measurably decline without regular practice and use. Knight also described developing an unusually acute, heightened sensory awareness of his immediate surroundings, noticing minute sounds, weather changes, and potential threats with an attentiveness he attributed directly to decades spent almost entirely alone in the same patch of forest, dependent on that awareness for basic survival and for avoiding detection. Perhaps most strikingly, Knight reported that he did not experience the profound loneliness many people might expect, and specifically stated he rarely felt bored, describing his solitary daily routine, reading extensively, observing nature closely, and managing his own survival, as generally fulfilling on its own terms, a claim that genuinely challenges some common assumptions about what extreme, sustained isolation must inevitably feel like from the inside. Knight's case sits deliberately uneasily alongside other isolation research we've covered: Antarctic crews, submarine sailors, Mars simulation volunteers, because nearly every protective factor identified in that research was largely or entirely absent from his 27 years. No structured team, no scheduled contact with family, no clear external purpose beyond his own survival, and no defined end date whatsoever. By the logic of most isolation research, this combination should predict severe psychological deterioration. Knight's own account and clinicians who examined him after his arrest offered genuinely mixed assessments, suggests a considerably more complicated reality. Real difficulties with social skills and verbal fluency after his return, alongside a self-reported experience of the isolation itself as largely calm, purposeful, and only rarely distressing. Some researchers studying his case have proposed that Knight's isolation, while extreme in duration, differed meaningfully from most studied isolation environments in one crucial respect. He retained near total autonomy and control over his own daily choices and environment throughout, a factor consistently identified elsewhere as protective, even as nearly every other typically protective factor was missing entirely. Others have cautioned against generalizing too far from a single, extraordinary case, noting that Knight's own psychological makeup, whatever its origin, may have made him unusually well-suited to solitude in a way that would not predict similar outcomes for most other people placed in identical circumstances. Christopher Knight's 27 years remain one of the most extensively documented cases of sustained, voluntary human isolation on record, precisely because he survived to describe it afterward, in detail, to researchers and journalists genuinely interested in understanding it rather than simply publicizing it. His case does not overturn the broader isolation research covered across this channel. The general pattern, that structure, purpose, and some degree of control protect the mind under isolation, while their absence tends to predict greater strain, still holds up well across the far larger body of controlled research on Antarctic crews, submarine sailors, and Mars simulation volunteers. What Knight's case adds is a genuine outlier data point, forcing researchers to hold two things true simultaneously: nearly 3 decades of profound, almost complete isolation, with real and measurable costs to language and social skill, and a self-reported inner experience that, by his own account, involved far less suffering than most people would confidently predict from the outside. After his arrest, Knight served jail time for his burglaries and was ultimately released back into ordinary society, reportedly adjusting to modern life with real, ongoing difficulty. Whatever the forest gave him, and whatever it cost him, remains, in the end, something only he can fully describe, and one of the most singular, carefully documented human experiments in solitude science may ever have the chance to study directly. If this story moved you, subscribe to Minds at the Edge. The human mind is full of stories like this one, and we uncover a new one every week.